Hi everyone, Donald Fauntleroy Duck here with Rhyme Signatures, the nerdiest music review this side of being directly responsible for the disappearance of most of my spare cash at the end of every month. And today we're going to be doing a review of the new Aristocrats album, Duck. Right, before we get started, I want to make one thing abundantly clear to all of you. There has been rumours, conjecture, debate and some whispers on the internet that I, the writer, CEO, CFO, editor, videographer, managing director and coffee boy of Rhyme Signatures Incorporated have a bias towards ducks. I would like to state for the record, this is categorically untrue. There is absolutely zero evidence or demonstrably recorded fact out there that I have a proclivity for cartoon waterfowl. Not a single shred of it. I am dumbfounded as to where these baseless accusations have come from, so I figured I'd nip it in the bud for you all right now and affirm that I have zero specialist interest in ducks. Right, now that we've cleared up that awkward point, I feel that I can now discuss the latest album from instrumental powerhouse trio The Aristocrats, the succinctly titled Duck. For those who aren't aware of this band, it's quite the roster they've got lined up, consisting of Govan on guitars, Brian Bella on bass, and Marco Minnemann on drums, each one being a shining example of an exemplary talent in their field, and weirdly each one with an alliterative name. Some of you may recognise Bella for his work with James LaBrie on his Mull Muzzler albums, or perhaps for his involvement with touring as part of Death Clock. Minnemann has performed with dozens of enormous names in the industry, but notably he provided the drums for some of Steven Wilson's most successful solo projects, as well as having an extensive solo career himself. Guthrie is another beacon of talent in the prog world, also having performed with Minnemann on those same Steven Wilson projects, but also having been the lead guitarist on Hans Zimmer's extraordinary live band from 2016 until 2023, as well as contributing to a number of his more epic movie soundtracks, including that of 2021's Dune. So, to say that there's pedigree to these boys would be putting it very politely. I can remember feeling shock and bewilderment during the dark ages of Mike Portnoy's departure from Dream Theater, but he was up for the running and the band totally snubbed Minnemann. For a band to let a drummer like Marco Minnemann slip out of their fingers is quite frankly a baffling decision, and one that I still cannot comprehend to this day. So what of the Aristocrats? How did these three paragons find each other? Performing together at the Anaheim Bass Bash during the Winter NAMM show in January 2011, the three guys realised how well they worked together, and, they made a band, and the rest, as they say, is history. Duck is their 5th studio LP of original material, and comes to us a full 5 years after their previous album of You Know What. And frankly, I've missed these guys. If there's anyone out there that I trust to be able to write an exceptional instrumental album, it's these three. I've enjoyed the heck out of everything that they've done to date, and Duck is no exception to this. In fact, I think I would tentatively call this their best work to date. You see, what I love about this band, and honestly about each individual person involved, is that they manage to strike out as true virtuosic musicians. I'm not talking about boring, wanky, technical show-offmanship. You can learn as much as you want out of a textbook and translate that into tedious, overtly complex instrumental masturbation all you want. But a true virtuoso has knowledge of timing, of restraint, of allowing the music to breathe and feel comfortable, but doing so in a manner that still comes across as jaw-droppingly technical and masterfully executed, which is exactly what the Aristocrats have become so well known for doing. There's 60 minutes worth of instrumental jams to be found on this album, and everyone here quite comfortably demonstrates why I consider each of them to be top 5 of all time at their respective crafts. But this is no mere jam album, no. The Aristocrats have challenged themselves even further with this album by creating a concept record. Yes, folks, Duck is an instrumental concept album, and no, I didn't think that could possibly work either. After all, it's one thing to tell a story with images but no words, but how can you tell a story with neither images or words? Well, I say no images, that's not strictly speaking true, is it? We do, after all, have this glorious album art, which has already taken the top spot for my Cover Art of the Year award, so everyone else stopped trying. Created by Lance Myers, who's worked on projects like Space Jam, The Prince of Egypt, Anastasia, and A Scanner Darkly, amongst others, it sets the tone and mood for the whole album, and really helps to bring the concept together, as well as doing a remarkable job of grounding the concept and helping you follow the story through the music. There's toe-tapping, danceable numbers like Aristocrats, threatening, moody pieces like Sergeant Rockhopper, atmospheric and introspective songs like Sitting with a Duck on a Bay and Muddle Through, and blistering, exciting closers like This Is Not Scrotum. It's a real testament to the band's abilities that with just guitars, bass and drums to their names, they are able to create richer, more textured and varied sets of sounds than some bands manage with a far greater variety of instruments at their disposal. I mean, just look at Guthrie. The man keeps on showing off why I consider him to be one of the greatest modern guitarists at every turn. He shreds and riffs with the best of them on this album, but his judicious effects use, as well as allowing time to let his bandmates carry the groove, really elevates the sounds on Duck. I've never seen a guitarist achieve so much with so little at times on this album. Some of the softer, jazzier, jammier sections of the album really do come alive with how creative and provocative Guthrie's playing is here. He's frankly a wonder to listen to, always choosing the perfect tone for the mood, always knowing when to step back and allow Bella's lower end to take the centre stage, or when to let Minnemann push the narrative forward with a burst of inspired percussion. Now, I'm always a little cautious of bands with relatively minimal instrumentation, especially in the face of the lack of vocals. Instrumental albums are, after all, historically quite difficult things for me to get into. Bands like Liquid Tension Experiment managed to get around this nicely with the inclusion of keyboards on top of the bread and butter of guitar, bass and drums. But of course, the Aristocrats have never had this. It's always been just the three of them. But I honestly think this speaks of the raw talent and exceptional songwriting of the band, that they can craft instrumental music that is this minimalist on paper, but still manages to find itself so intriguing and so multifaceted with how expertly they weave their abilities into the music. And that's the biggest draw of Duck for me. It's how the Aristocrats have managed to make so much from so little, and this album really does exemplify this in the best possible way. But the album isn't perfect, as so few things are. There are numerous times where the narrative becomes difficult to track and the music meanders a little bit. For better or worse, there's a few moments, especially in the middle section of the album, where it almost feels like the band have, strayed off the beaten path a little bit too much and are falling into the trap of improv and jam musicianship, rather than something more structured and built by design. This honestly wouldn't normally be an issue. One of my favourite albums by Ulver, for example, is ostensibly a live recorded jam session. But when you're dealing with a concept album with a narrative spine and direction, the somewhat ambling and freeform nature of some of the music here can feel a little bit frustrating. It's not even that this is necessarily a bad thing, though. Some of this jam-style stuff is amongst some of the coolest music on the record, but I can't help but feel that it slightly distracts from the narrative, which is already quite challenging to follow, given the solely instrumental nature of the music as is. But I digress. I'm honestly really just nitpicking here, almost for the sake of it. This is all very minor stuff, and may even be perceived positively depending on your preferences, and what you have come to expect from the band. Ultimately, I'm more about structure and order when it comes to music, but in spite of that, the Aristocrats still manage to keep me enthralled for most of what they do. So, what else can I say about the Aristocrats' Duck? Far be it from me to let any personal biases towards cartoon ducks have any sway or influence on my opinion of this album. I am, after all, not completely duck-pilled, I swear on me mum. This album remains a tremendous amount of fun, and is a wonderful showcase for some of the most talented musicians alive right now. I've always had a great time with the band's work, but I always felt like their previous albums only really hung around with me for a week or so before I moved on to something else. Duck feels different. It feels deeper, more rewarding, and more enriched than anything the band has put together prior to this. Now, I don't know if it's the driving narrative route they've gone for or what, but there is something incredibly Moorish about this particular variety of Duck. And I sincerely doubt that 2024 is going to have a more engaging or addictive closing track than This Is Not Scrotum, which has rapidly become my most played song of the year so far. Now, I'm obviously going to be picking up a physical copy on vinyl, if only just for the greatest album art of the year, but for a general audience participation recommendation, I'd probably buy a digital copy of this one. Sit back, let your imagination paint the picture, and enjoy the sumptuous sounds and energy of three masterclass musicians performing at the top of their game. This is all, of course, guys, just my opinion, as you know, so if you have listened to Duck, please tell me what you thought about the record in the comments down there. If you did like this video, please do share it around with anyone else who you think would possibly enjoy it. Please do give us a thumbs up, and please do consider subscribing for more content. My link tree will be left down below, where you'll find all the various places to find me on social media, as well as further evidence that I am absolutely not obsessed with cartoon ducks whatsoever. And until next time, guys, as always, keep your rhyme signatures extremely odd.